SIMISOLA in Korea. As I leaned back on the cot in the school clinic, letting out a soft sigh as the antiseptic smell filled my nose. My head still throbbed lightly from the dodgeball incident, but the quiet hum of the air conditioner was oddly comforting. I traced my fingers over the thin blanket covering my legs, my mind replaying the chaos of the past week. A new school, awkward introductions, and the ever-present struggle of fitting in. Then, of course, there was Minjun, a whole other kind of distraction I wasn't sure I wanted to unpack. The door creaked open, and the nurse stepped in, her phone in hand. "Your father's been informed," she said kindly. "He's on his way to pick you up." Great. Just great. I could already picture my dad's worried face, his barrage of questions, and his over-the-top concern. "Thanks," I muttered, more to myself than to her. The moment my dad arrived, I knew I was in for it. His eyes scanned me like I'd been in a major accident instead of taking a dodgeball to the head. "Mimi, are you all right?" He knelt beside me, his hands hovering as if afraid to touch. "I'm fine, Dad," I said, trying to sound casual, though my cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "It's just dodgeball. I wasn't even playing seriously." His brow furrowed. "They shouldn't have let you play if it wasn't safe. I'm speaking to the school about this." "Dad, please don't," I said quickly, sitting up straighter. "It wasn't anyone's fault. Just let it go, okay?" He sighed heavily but didn't argue. Instead, he helped me up and led me to the car, his hand lingering protectively on my shoulder the whole way. The next morning, the school was buzzing. During the morning assembly, the principal stepped up to the microphone, his voice cutting through the chatter. "This weekend, we're excited to announce a field trip for all Year 10 students. You'll spend the weekend at the Coastal Retreat Center, engaging in educational activities, outdoor fun, and team-building exercises." A field trip. Just the thought of it made my stomach churn. More social situations, more chances to mess up. I could feel the nerves creeping in, but then I thought of Hannah. At least I wouldn't be entirely alone. That evening, I brought up the trip at dinner. "Dad, the school's organizing a field trip this weekend," I said, trying to sound casual. "A field trip?" His eyes narrowed immediately. "What kind of trip?" "It's just a weekend retreat," I said, bracing myself for his reaction. "Everyone in my year is going." "I don't like the idea of you going," he said, setting down his fork. "What if something happens? I won't be there to make sure you're okay." "Dad," I sighed, leaning closer, "I'll be fine. It's not like we'll be playing dodgeball all weekend. I'll be with Hannah and some friends. Please, I need this. It's hard enough trying to fit in." His expression softened, and I could see the worry in his eyes. He reached out, placing a hand over mine. "I just don't want anything to happen to you. You're all I have, Mimi." My chest tightened. "I know, Dad, but you have to trust me. I'll call you as soon as I get there. I promise." After a long pause, he sighed. "All right, but keep your phone on, and don't hesitate to call if anything happens." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, Dad." The night before the trip, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, my duffel bag open in front of me. Clothes, toiletries, snacks, it felt like I was forgetting something. My phone buzzed, and I picked it up to see Hannah's name flashing on the screen. "Hey," I said, putting her on speaker. "Are you packed yet?" Hannah asked, her excitement practically radiating through the phone. "Almost," I replied, glancing at my bag. "Don't forget your swimsuit," she said. "Swimsuit? Why?" "Because there's a pool, and maybe even a beach. You can't miss that." I groaned, shaking my head. "Fine, I'll add it." The school parking lot was alive with chatter the next morning. I spotted Hannah, and we exchanged a quick hug before realizing we were on different buses. "See you there," she called as she disappeared into hers. I boarded mine, sliding into an empty seat by the window. Plugging in my AirPods, I let my playlist drown out the noise around me. The bus rumbled to life, and I leaned back, hoping to zone out for the ride. "Excuse me," a familiar voice said. I looked up to see Min Jun holding up his seat card. "This is my seat." "Oh," I said, scooting over to make room. He settled in beside me, and for a while we sat in silence. Then I caught him humming along to one of my songs. "You know this one?" I asked, pulling out an AirPod. "Not really," he said with a shrug, "but it's good." I hesitated, then offered him the other AirPod. "Here." He took it, and soon we were debating songs, laughing at the worst ones, and arguing over which artists were overrated. By the time we arrived, the awkwardness between us had melted away, leaving something unexpected in its place. When we arrived at the retreat center, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of nervous anticipation. The place was beautiful. Rustic cabins surrounded by tall trees, the faint sound of waves in the distance. But I was more focused on the room assignments. The thought of being paired with people I didn't know made my stomach twist. As I unfolded the paper with my group, relief washed over me. "Hannah," I said, turning to her with a smile. "We're together." "And Lisa," Hannah added, glancing at the name. When we entered our assigned room, it was cozy, simple beds with colorful quilts, a shared wooden wardrobe, and a window that let in warm, golden light. I started to unpack my bag, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease. "Hi," a voice said softly from the doorway. I turned to see Lisa, a petite girl with blonde hair and a shy smile. She looked familiar, but I couldn't immediately place her. "I think we were on the same dodgeball team the other day," she added, her voice hesitant but kind. The memory clicked. "Yeah, I remember," I said, smiling back. "You were fast. Nice to officially meet you." "Thanks," Lisa said, her cheeks turning pink. Hannah jumped into the conversation, of course, her usual energy lighting up the room. "Well, now that we're all acquainted, this is going to be fun. Who's calling dibs on the top shelf in the wardrobe?" The three of us laughed. And just like that, the awkwardness dissolved. We unpacked together, chatting about the trip so far, sharing snacks, and even debating over which bunk had the best view of the forest outside. For the first time in a while, I felt settled. Calm, even. The weight of trying to fit in, to navigate unfamiliar faces, seemed lighter in that small room with Hannah and Lisa. As I lay back on my bed, staring at the wooden ceiling beams, I found myself thinking, maybe this trip won't be so bad after all. The second day of the field trip began with a sky so clear it felt painted, the sunlight warm enough to make everything glow. As we made our way through a spring in the woods, I trailed behind the group, listening to the excited chatter around me, but not really joining in. Swimming wasn't exactly my thing, and honestly, I didn't mind being a spectator today. When we reached the spring, its crystal clear water sparkled like something out of a postcard. The air smelled fresh, the kind of clean that only nature could provide. Hannah, of course, was the first to make a break for it. "I'm so glad we finally have some downtime," she called out, kicking off her shoes and racing toward the water like a kid who'd been waiting all year for summer. "I'm gonna dive right in. You coming, see me?" I hesitated, my gaze flicking between her and the water. "I think I'll just stay here for a bit," I replied, lowering myself onto a smooth chair by the edge. The breeze danced around me, carrying the sound of water gently lapping against my face. It was peaceful here. No noise, no pressure, just me and the quiet rhythm of nature. I let myself relax for the first time in what felt like days. Hannah laughed, splashing a playful wave of water in my direction before darting off. I rolled my eyes and shook my head, a small laugh escaping me despite myself. I hadn't expected to notice anyone else, but as I looked around, my eyes landed on someone from Class B. Leo, I think his name was. He moved toward the water with an easy confidence that was the exact opposite of the loud energy buzzing around him. His features were sharp, almost serious, but there was something calm about him. When he noticed me watching, he nodded in acknowledgement and offered a polite smile. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and quieter than I expected. "The water's amazing. You should come in." I smiled back, a little embarrassed to have been caught staring. "I'm not much of a swimmer," I admitted, "just enjoying the view." He raised an eyebrow, a trace of amusement in his expression. "Fair enough. Sometimes it's nice to just watch. Exactly, I said, feeling strangely comfortable talking to him. For a moment, we both looked out at the water in silence. The others were laughing, splashing, and diving, but here on the edge, everything felt slower, easier. I stood up, wanting to stretch my legs, but as I shifted my weight, my foot landed on a slippery stone. The world tilted as my balance gave way, and suddenly I was flailing, my arms reaching for something, anything, to keep from falling into the spring. Watch out! Leo's voice cut through the panic just as I felt his hand grab my arm. His grip was firm, steadying me before I could plunge headfirst into the water. My heart was racing, and I gasped, clutching his arm as if it were a lifeline. "Oh my gosh, thank you," I managed, my voice shaky. His lips quirked into a small smile, his eyes meeting mine. "No problem. You okay?" I nodded quickly, trying to catch my breath. "Yeah, I think so. That was close." "I've got you," he said, his voice calm and steady, like this kind of thing was no big deal for him. "Just be careful next time." I took a step back, still gripping his arm lightly as I steadied myself. My pulse was slowing, but I could still feel the adrenaline buzzing in my veins. "Thanks again. I really appreciate it," he shrugged, his smile soft but genuine. "It's no big deal. Just glad I was there." With that, he turned back toward the water, his presence as unassuming as it had been before. But something about that brief moment lingered with me. It wasn't just the fact that he'd caught me. It was the way he made it seem like the most natural thing in the world. The next day began with a buzz of energy as the final event of the field trip was announced. A treasure hunt. The teachers explained the rules. Find all the items on the list, and the first person to finish wins a prize. The excitement around me was infectious, with everyone breaking into groups or sprinting off solo as soon as the clues were handed out. But I wasn't feeling it. I don't feel like running around, so I hung back, trying to decide where to start. I clutched the clue sheet, scanning it like the words would somehow rearrange themselves into a clearer direction. Before I knew it, I had wandered away from the crowd. That's when it hit me. I was lost. Completely, embarrassingly lost. My heart sped up as I looked around. The forest felt like it had grown denser, the trees crowding in as if they knew I had no idea where I was. I clenched the paper in my hand and took a few hesitant steps, trying to retrace my path. And then, a voice. "Lost, huh?" I turned sharply, startled, and found myself looking at Minjun. He was leaning casually against a tree, hands tucked into his pockets, like this was the most normal thing in the world. That calm smirk of his made my pulse jump for reasons I didn't fully understand. "Yeah," I admitted, heat creeping into my face. "I guess I am. I'm hopeless at this kind of thing." He chuckled, and the sound was both infuriating and oddly reassuring. "No one's really that good at it. Let me help you." I blinked, surprised by his offer, but before I could respond, he started walking. His confidence was contagious, and I found myself following him without a second thought. As we walked, I tried to focus on the task at hand, but my mind kept drifting. The text he mentioned at Hannah's party, it had been nagging at me ever since. The way he'd brought it up had felt important, like there was more to it than he'd said. I took a breath, my curiosity finally winning. "Hey, there's something I've been wondering about that text you mentioned. What was that about?" Minjun glanced at me, his expression softening, but there was something distant in his eyes. "You don't remember?" he asked, his voice quieter now. I frowned, confused. "Should I?" He stopped walking and turned to face me fully, his gaze meeting mine. For a moment, there was something in his eyes, something that felt like a mix of sadness and hope. "Mimi? You really don't remember me?" The name hit me like a jolt. "Mimi?" I repeated, my confusion growing. "Am I supposed to?" His lips curved into a faint smile, but there was a weight to it, like he was carrying something I couldn't quite see. "You don't remember the little Korean boy who stayed at your mom's Airbnb in Lagos? The one who came with his dad for a month? I used to send a text every day to the number your mom gave us." My heart stopped. The memories were faint, like shadows on the edge of my mind, but they were there. A boy, younger than the one standing in front of me, laughing over bowls of my mom's jollof rice. Could it really be him? Wait, my voice trembled slightly. But I didn't get any text? He stared at me, his smile fading a little. Oh, I sent a text every day for an entire year, hoping to hear from you. I didn't have a way to contact you directly, but I didn't stop trying. I stared at him, my chest tightening as the pieces clicked together. Why didn't you just call instead of texting? He looked a little sheepish, glancing away. I don't know. I guess I was nervous, but your mom made the best jollof rice. I always looked forward to those dinners. I couldn't help but laugh at that, the memory of my mom's cooking filling me with warmth. I remember that. You ate so much, you said it was the best meal you'd ever had. Your face would become so red after eating the pepper. We shared a laugh, and for a moment it felt like no time had passed at all. But then his phone buzzed, and the moment broke. I watched as he pulled it out, his expression shifting from amused to serious. He stepped away slightly, muttering something under his breath as he answered the call. I stood there, awkward and unsure, watching him from a distance. His voice was calm, but there was a tension in his posture that I couldn't ignore. I'll get back to you, he said before ending the call and slipping the phone back into his pocket. Everything okay? I asked hesitantly, unsure if I should press. His eyes met mine, and for a second I thought he might tell me. But then he nodded, his expression unreadable. Yeah, just some stuff I need to take care of. But don't worry about it. We should finish the treasure hunt, right? I nodded, though the curiosity gnawed at me. There was so much about Minjun I still didn't understand, so many questions that lingered just beneath the surface. But I didn't push, not yet. We continued walking, the weight of our earlier conversation hanging in the air. The treasure hunt faded into the background, but the connection I felt with him, the threads of our shared past, stayed with me. That day, I realized something about Minjun. He wasn't just a boy I'd met by chance. He was a piece of my story, a reminder of moments I'd almost forgotten. And as we walked side by side, I couldn't help but wonder what other parts of my past, and maybe my future, he held in his hands.